There's a phrase in the automotive world that goes a little something like, there's nothing more expensive than a cheap luxury car. But is that really true? I've daily driven my Jaguar XJ6 for 1 year now, and it's time to add up the cost. So a little background about the car. The car is a 1985 Jaguar XJ6 Sovereign, which was, I think, pretty much top of the range with the exception of the Daimler. Now this was a 4.2 straight 6. They did come in a V12 as well, but that's a lot more expensive and was definitely out of my budget. I paid £1,500 for the car. Technically it was euros, but in pounds it was £1,500 for the car, and it hadn't seen the road for over 7 years, I believe. In fact, it might even have been more. It was 2007 when it was last on the road actually, so that would make it 13 years. It hadn't seen the road in 13 years, which meant it was a big risk. I myself am a Jaguar fanatic. I've grown up around them back whenever they were about £200 a piece, way back in the early 2000s when my family would have had them. And I've always wanted one of my own. Now the XJ6 wasn't actually the one that I wanted. The one that I wanted was an XJS V12. However, I just could not find one for the right money, and this one came up and I thought I would take a chance on it. Now the car is, I think, Regent Grey is the colour, and it has a full service history, and I mean full service history from day one, even with the original receipts and everything. Connor's going to be doing a video on the history of Jaguar, and he'll go into a bit more in depth about what my car itself actually has with it, but needless to say, there's a lot of history with this vehicle. So after buying it, I had to get it ready for MOT. Now, it seemingly didn't really need anything. We have a garage and a pit here ourselves, so I'm not including labour costs. However, if you don't have this, you should be factoring this into your own costs if you are considering daily driving something this old, British, and just a Jaguar really. So for MOT, what it needed was, it needed one patch in the floor, one single patch, and that was done ourselves, welded in, so factor in the cost of one patch being welded into the vehicle. And it needed the handbrake connected on one of the calipers at the back. The previous owner had done discs and pads on the back, but never finished the job and didn't connect up the handbrake, so we had to connect up the handbrake on that. You can factor in whatever labour costs that might cost. There was no parts required or anything, it was literally just connecting it back on. Why they didn't finish it, I do not know, but hey ho. So realistically, our MOT actually only cost us about £30 because it was the price of the MOT. Now the car passed first time, thankfully, and I drove it all the time. I mean, well, not all the time because 4.2 ain't the cheapest to put petrol in. But apart from that, I drove it as much as I could, whether it was raining, snowing, hailstones, you name it, that car was driven, which, to be quite honest, is the only way to do it. If you're going to buy a second-hand luxury car, make sure it has no problems, and if it has them, fix them, but drive it every day. Don't let it lie up for an extended period of time because it is not good on a car. Next up is tax. Now this, being a 4.2, falls outside of the 1.3 litre tax bracket, which means it's the full classic pre-2001 amount of £240, I believe. These are rough estimate figures, by the way. So that puts our total cost at £270 for the year. Well, £270.50, but you get the idea. So the first cost I needed was tyres, because believe it or not, the tyres on it were the original ones from 2007, so they were bad. And it also needed an alignment, which was the reason that the suspension was really wallowy and it was all over the road and it was horrible to drive, which I didn't know until somebody else drove it and said, this is terrible. I figured this was just a quirk of old Jags. It wasn't. So after tyres and an alignment, they were Falcon tyres as well, not cheap ones, they were proper good tyres. The price of that came to £205, which brings our total to £475, I think 475, say. So, oof. So the next cost was, so it was my first actual breakdown in the car, because believe it or not, it was actually very, very reliable and still is to this day. It hasn't properly broken down on me, apart from that one time, which I'll get into. So the first and only breakdown I had was the wires going to the alternator had frayed really poorly, so the battery wasn't being charged, and I rang the AA to come out because I didn't have any tools with me because I stupidly had faith in the car. And the AA came out and fixed it side of the road and it was fine. But the problem with this was the battery was already dead and it wasn't charging properly for a good while, so the battery was old anyway. But in my old work, when it came to leaving time, which was a car parts place thankfully, the battery was stone dead and I had no way of getting home, so I just bought a battery for it, which came to a total of £43. So if you're keeping track, which I'm not, that takes us to about 510. Not sure, I'll put the figure below me. Those are the only two costs that I've had to do. Now there has been one other problem, which while Connor is driving it at the minute, and the exhaust must have got old with rust and stuff because it just split down the middle, and it sounded amazing, to be fair. But not what you want in a luxury car. So we got that welded up because I don't have it, so he had to send it to somebody to get it welded, as in I don't have the car at the minute. So that came to a total of £40 to get the exhaust repaired and sorted. So crazily enough, that's actually all of the costs that I have had with my Jaguar. That's the costs to daily drive a 1985 Jaguar XJ6. Now, I know what you're thinking, that can't be right. I mean, you don't buy an old luxury car and have nothing go wrong. Crazily enough, nothing really has went wrong. Now, if I wanted to, I could probably spend a fortune on it and get it immaculate and perfect, but then sure, you'd never want to drive it, so what's the point in that? But long story short, it actually cost me far less than the horror stories on the internet would lead you to believe that it costs to drive an old car every day, especially an old luxury car. Now don't get me wrong, Mercedes or BMW of the time may have far more electronics in it to go wrong, but they're also Mercedes and BMW, so they're probably not going to break, realistically. Mercedes at that time had a reputation for being bulletproof, which we can kind of attest to with our Mercs in the fleet, so I can believe that. But a lot of people were very scared whenever I said I had bought a classic Jaguar for £1,500, but all I can say is if you buy the right car with the right history and look after it properly, you will not have the same problems that everybody says you will. I hope that if you decide to purchase an old luxury car, no, not old, classic luxury car, you hopefully have the same brilliant experience that I have had, because you cannot beat the comfort and the looks. And in the Jag's case, the burnouts. And the speed. So, yeah. So that's just a little quick video because I thought some people might be interested in knowing just how much it costs to actually daily drive a Jaguar, and I do drive other cars as well, but that has only affected the price in petrol. It hasn't affected repairs on the vehicle or anything because I still drove it a lot, so it would, if anything was going to break, it still would have. So I know it was a short video, but that just about wraps it up for this, to be honest. A nice quick short one for you to watch, and hopefully you have as good an experience as I have with your classic car. I've been Tom Patterson. Be sure to follow me on Instagram. Subscribe to us on YouTube for more tidbit videos like this and more in-depth videos, which we do all sorts really. We'll be doing the history on Jaguar, the history of classic Mercedes, the history of many different classic things. So if classic cars are your thing, this is your channel. Also, be sure to check out Connor's Instagram at Hughes Corporation, and be sure to check out our shop at 427motorsports.co.uk/store. Thanks for watching and good luck.